Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Marcus with MMA Worldwide. I'm here with none other than Jason Chambers, TV personality and MMA fighter. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's been a busy week.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I bet you don't know this, that you have a lot of acting background. You've been, on a lot of soap operas and stuff like that. Have you always wanted to get on that side in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. People that know me from the acting community are like, oh, you fight, and people that know me from the fighting community are like, oh, you act. So, it's kind of a unique balance because I've been acting, since I was probably 16 in like high school and plays and stuff, and then, I started doing the fights and stuff back in '98. I've been training since '94, so it's kind of across the spectrum.
It's really, really random how you ended up in MMA. What was the process like? How'd you go from acting to fighting?
I didn't want to get a real job. No, but honestly, it's almost true. I mean, I lived in Chicago, and I started getting into mixed martial arts at a Jeet Kune Do school back in 1994. And the guy, Joe Goitia, was a kickboxer and a Jeet Kune Do specialist called Unak. And he had an affiliation with Renzo Gracie. Now, back in '94, finding a guy who was a blue belt was huge because nobody, got head jiu-jitsu.
Everyone's in Brazil, right?
Everyone's in Brazil. So I started training there, and the classes were broken up into striking and grappling and stuff, and I really just kind of gravitated more towards the gi jiu-jitsu, and I started doing some tournaments, and then just kind of one thing led to another, and then in '98, there was these things in Chicago called Battle of the Masters that like Pat Miletich fought in, a bunch of things. So I said, man, that looks like fun. I'd love to do that. Some of the guys in our school were competing, and I was competing with them at a pretty good level. And, back in, 1997, 98, 99, a legit fight was, okay, you're a jiu-jitsu guy, you're going to fight this guy who does karate, or this is a boxer against a wrestler. Because that's all that really was. People weren't, cross-training. So I started doing that, and then once I fought Thiago Alves, I realized this may not be the career choice, the best possible career. But on the acting side of it, I was taking acting classes in Chicago, like Second City and Act One, and I moved to New York, and I did a Meisner program there, and I just started submitting myself for like some, background and extra work, and that's how I got my first speaking role. And the fighting was just kind of haphazard because I was always training, I was always doing jiu-jitsu, and I didn't work my hands as much, but it was kind of an easy way for me to, make a couple $1,000, so I didn't have to work for, a month or two to kind of stretch that money out. Mm-hmm. It was either that or really get something like a full-time, waitering gig or something like that.
It's a tough way to come up with some change, man. Go fight for $2,000.
It wasn't so bad until I ended up fighting, Thiago Alves. I had like 8 fights, or 8 or 9 fight win streak prior to that. And, there just comes a certain level where that talent level starts to jump. There's a bunch of dudes at like the C-level shows that train for a little bit, or they're just not very serious about it. Or even if they've had 5 or 6 fights, they're not really training with a good camp 3-4 hours a day. They're training 3 times a week, twice a week. And then you kind of have the guys who do well at that level, and when you go up a level to the guys that are, starting to come up and that are eventually going to be the UFC stars and the Bellator stars and the Strikeforce stars, those guys are really hungry. That's all they focus on. Mm-hmm. And, no one really gets into mixed martial arts for the money. Now maybe we're seeing a little more influx of that, because if you were going into college, well, you had your choice of sports, wrestling, basketball, football, baseball. Well, the only thing that didn't have a career after college was wrestling. So now you can get into mixed martial arts and make money. So I think in 5-6 years we're going to see a huge influx of guys that are just going to be killers, and I don't want to be around for that.
Yeah, a lot of kids are starting to train, since 6, 7, and you're right. In 10 years, that's amazing to see like the talent level and stuff that's going to come out.
Even if you think about guys like George St. Pierre, who's arguably the top athlete and the best mixed martial artist, in my opinion. Even that's a guy who only started wrestling like 5 or 6 years ago. I mean, so we're going to see guys now that aren't one-dimensional, that are coming up as wrestlers or coming up as strikers. Like you said, you're going to see 6 and 7-year-old kids in mixed martial art classes, and that's going to be crazy. Do you imagine what a schoolyard fight's going to look like? We got 2 9-year-old black belts in jiu-jitsu with 4 years of Muay Thai kicking the crap out of each other?
Oh man, it's been crazy. Everybody knows you're on the Human Weapon. I watched the show. I thought it was a freaking awesome show. I thought the concept was awesome. How did that process come about with you getting on the show?
It was really weird. I was actually out here for acting, and I was still kind of, doing the fighting. And fighting is kind of like, it's kind of like a drug, once you do it, you go, oh, that wasn't so bad. You want to take a few months off, and then you're kind of like drawn back to it, even though you know it's not something you should be doing. It's that competitive side. So I was actually in Japan for a fight in Deep, and I was on MMA.tv, and I saw someone had put a post up that they were doing a pilot for a show that needed real fighters that had a good TV personality, and I really didn't think much of it because it's kind of like your buddy saying, hey dude, I know this guy that can get you into the UFC. You go, oh yeah, okay, well we follow up with that. It just sounds like, it doesn't come through the right channels. Mm-hmm. So I had my manager, who was my acting manager, follow up with it, and he just kind of told me what the premise was, and I thought it was cool. Drew Fickett was actually living at my house at the time, so he and I, like in the middle of like doing laundry, we made a really bad tape, with just a handheld camera and sent it in, and they said, hey, do you want to come out and audition for it? And they had the auditions out here, and there's like 20 of us. Josh Koscheck was there, Chris Lieben, Dean Thomas was one of my best friends.
Wow, you beat up all those guys.
No, I didn't beat up any of those guys. I beat out those guys. There's a big difference. But yeah, so there was like Seth Petrelli. There was a bunch of guys here, and it was kind of unique because half of the people auditioning were mixed martial artists, the other half were traditional martial artists, and then the guy running the audition and the director was really best known for his direction of porn. So I didn't know, you got a lot of guys in the entertainment industry, they freelance. If you're a camera guy for this, you can be a camera guy for that, and vice versa. But it's kind of funny because it was like a 2-day audition process, and some of the stuff they had us doing was, they'd pair us up and they'd have us interview other people. They had us kind of running around. It almost felt like a reality show. We were eating bad crap. They just wanted to kind of get a sense of personality and skill level. And, it was fun. And, at one point they started, Eddie Bravo auditioned for it. He was there. At one point they put some people together and they were like, okay, well, we're going to have everybody spar. And, you guys like Chris Lieben who are just licking their chops. Then you got the traditional, like, 46-year-old Taekwondo guy who, like, they're like, all right, you guys spar. And I was like, I just saw a red flag go up. Like, I can't let this happen. Like, how about I will come in the middle and play referee? So it was cool. We did that. And then it was really close to being me and Dean Thomas for a long time. Oh. The production company, Jupiter, called me and they said, hey, we love you. We want you to do this. It was just for the pilot at the time. It wasn't for a whole series. And they were like, well, it's between you and then either Dean Thomas or Bill Duff. And obviously they went with Bill. I think Dean and I, just from a TV standpoint, are too close. Even though he's obviously has much more accolades as a fighter and things, but from a production standpoint, we're both kind of like the outgoing, funny person with fight records. So they wanted to kind of have that contrast. And that's what we did. We shot the pilot in Thailand for like 14 days, 14 long, grueling, sweaty, hot days. 6 months later, we got a call that we were doing a series. So.
That must have been a really proud moment for you. Ka-ching.
Well, it was really unique. It kind of became surreal because, the production companies in Tennessee, and we were out there, and they're like, oh yeah, the History Channel. And they didn't just pick this show up, they actually made that their flagship show. They wanted to kind of, if you look right around the time Ice Road Truckers and Human Weapon were on the show, back like 06, 07, they were taking the network, because they were kind of known to be like the network that your dad watches about, I think World War II.
Hitler Channel.
Yeah, the Hitler Channel, right?
Yeah.
For sure. So they wanted to bring in that younger demographic, and they wanted to kind of skew younger. So the way they did that was they put tons of money for a cable show into Human Weapon. Mm-hmm. They flew us out to New York. We did this big photo thing. There was like billboards in Times Square. They had like movie trailers in the theaters, like previews of me and Bill and stuff. And it was a huge push. I got a ton of publicity from that. There was billboards all over Los Angeles with Human Weapon and my mug on it. Mm-hmm. It's really surreal when you're like driving. I used to fly in and out of LAX for the show, and I fly out of LAX, and the billboard there was Human Weapon Thursday night or Thursday night to 10. I see my mug on there like doing some funky pose. I'm like, that is freaking crazy, So it's just kind of crazy, And then it was a great experience.